Madam Premier.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and fellow members of the Legislative Assembly, guests, and of course honoured chiefs of the Chilcotin Nation who are here with us on the floor of the legislature today. We come together today to acknowledge and to explain the wrongs done by past governments to the Chilcotin people. We come today to talk about how we must overcome them and how we must take a new path of mutual respect and to begin the process of healing. In the spring of 1864, the Chilcotin people took action to defend their territory. It was a critical event in the conflict that we want to talk about today, known as the Chilcotin War. Long before the arrival of Europeans, the Chilcotin lived on and cared for their homelands. After the colony of British Columbia was established, Chilcotin lands were declared open for access without notice or without effort at diplomacy. Many newcomers made their way into the interior. Some of those came into conflict with the Chilcotin, and some brought with them an even greater danger, and that was smallpox, which by some reliable historical accounts, there is indication was spread intentionally. Facing the risk of extinction and in response to a series of threats, the Chilcotin convened a council to declare war. The Chilcotin attacked the road crew near Butte Inlet, and over the ensuing days, they removed all settlers from their lands. The Chilcotin War Party took refuge in their territory beyond the reach of the colonial militia, who had threatened the Chilcotin people. That summer, Gold Commissioner William Cox sent the Tsilhqot'in Chiefs a sacred gift of tobacco, and with it, an invitation to discuss terms of peace. Chief Tsilhqot'in and his men accepted this truce. They rode into the camp to negotiate peace. And then, in an unexpected act of betrayal, they were arrested, imprisoned, and tried for murder. On October 26th, 5 chiefs were hanged. Head War Chief Tsilhqot'in, Chief Beale, Chief Tsilhqot'in, Chief Talbat, and Chief Jesus. Their bodies are all buried in the city of Quesnel. The following summer, Chief Aham sought to pay reparations to compensate for any harm caused to innocents in the events of the Chilcotin War. He was also hanged. He is buried in New Westminster. Madam Speaker, today we acknowledge that these chiefs were not criminals and they were not outlaws. They were warriors, they were leaders, and they were engaged in a territorial dispute to defend their lands and their peoples. Their descendants continue to reside on and care for those territories, and they do it with the same commitment to their lands and their culture that their forebears showed. The Chilcotin continue to assert their right and their responsibility to govern those lands. And despite every success that they have had, the pain of 1864 has never receded. So, Madam Speaker, I stand here today in this legislature, 150 years later, to say that the province of British Columbia is profoundly sorry for the wrongful arrest, trial, and hanging of the 6 chiefs, and for the many wrongs inflicted by past governments. To the extent that it falls within the power of the province of British Columbia, we confirm without reservation that these 6 Chilcotin chiefs are fully exonerated of any crime or wrongdoing. The Chilcotin people rightly regard these chiefs as heroes of their people. And so today, Madam Speaker, we offer this apology, an historic day, 150 years later, in the presence of 2 of the 6 chiefs who have fought so hard to ensure that their territories and their people are recognized by the laws of this land. And I know that this legislature, I hope that this legislature will join me in supporting this redress that we offer today.
The Leader of the Official Opposition. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker, and it is an honour and a privilege to stand and respond to the ministerial statement from the Premier in the presence of Chief William and Chief Alphonse here today to observe the apology just offered and wholeheartedly and unanimously supported by this side of the House. The story of the relationship between First Nations and colonial settlers in this province is not a short one, nor is it a sweet one. Throughout British Columbia, First Nations people remember the loss of land and possessions and the deceit of colonial governments to achieve their will. They were reminded, as the Premier said, of smallpox, brought by settlers, killing tens of thousands, extinguishing individuals, families, and communities in its wake. And all of this forms the backdrop, as the Premier said, to the attack on settlers in Butte Inlet in 1864, the arrest of the Chilcotin Chiefs, invited to talk peace, but again deceived by colonial governments, tried and subsequently hanged in Quesnel and later in Westminster. And the words from those trials ring in the ears, I know, of Chief Alphonse and Chief William, but I remind the House that the last words of one of the chiefs was, "We came for war, not for murder." And to have the exoneration announced today by the Premier, I believe, is an appropriate step for this legislature, but not the first step, and certainly, I'm hopeful, not the last. The process of recognition and reconciliation for the history we share with the Tsilhqot'in people is going to continue. And in the decades between 1864 and 1893, I know there was little hope for the statement that was made by the Premier here today. But in 1993, then Attorney General Colin Gableman apologized on behalf of the government and the people of British Columbia in a press release. And it was done in a press release because at that time, we felt, and I look over at the Attorney General and other Attorney Generals that have been in this place, there was a fear within government that if you did the right thing, there may be consequences. And I'm hopeful today, as we stand in this place and apologize doing the right thing, that the consequence will be a genuine start to reconciliation with the Tsilhqot'in people. After the apology by press release by Colin Gableman, it was another 6 years before a plaque to commemorate, or rather to recognize, the wrongful hangings of the Tsilhqot'in Chiefs was placed in Quesnel. And we will be there, I believe, the Premier and I and Chief William and Chief Alphonse this weekend to formally recognize again the exoneration of today. These steps by legislators and on behalf of all of the people of British Columbia will, I believe, begin the new, bright, positive future that was reaffirmed by the Supreme Court this summer with the recognition, the absolute recognition of Aboriginal title for the Tsilhqot'in people, and will lead to a development of a relationship that will not disappear the past, but will allow us to rejoice in our common future. I thank the Premier for bringing this forward. I thank the Minister of Aboriginal Relations and Reconciliation and the Attorney General and all members of this House for showing the respect that Chief William and Chief Alphonse deserve on this day, not just for themselves, but for those who came before them. Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker.